Okay, it is now 2, so we'll go ahead and get started to try to stay on track. My name is Brittany Candioto, and I am currently the president of SWSA. I will be moderating our student roundtable today and for our discussion on practicum readiness. I'd like to thank everyone for zooming in and attending because we know everyone has crazy schedules. And just a reminder, this is the Tulsa panel, and the Norman panel has a complete separate link. We can give you that link if you're in the wrong one if you need it. But today we have 4 MSW students. There is Jana, and I'm sorry if I say names wrong, but there's Jana, Ayana, Sarah Lynn, and Jenna. And if the 4 of you could introduce yourselves and kind of let everyone know where you're currently going to practicum or where your last practicum site was, and when you will be graduating and when you have graduated, or if you have already graduated, what year. So we can start with Jana, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jana Strom. I did my first practicum at DHS in child welfare, permanency planning. And my practicum that I'm in now is at Family Hope House. It's an agency here in Tulsa that does outpatient therapy services, especially for kids and their families that are probably involved in like the foster care system or have just gone through some trauma. So I am graduating officially in August, but I'm walking in May. So yeah, I extended to the summer, so I'll be here until August. Was that all of the questions?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Also, I sorry if you said this, but did you say you are going to be employment based there, or
Oh,
that's just for your
no. Yeah, I am here now and I'm not employment based.
Okay, next we can do Ayana.
Hi, I'm Ayana. I am a foundation year practicum student, and my practicum is at DHS in Family Centered Services. It is not employment based, and I will graduate next May of 2022.
Thank you. And then Sarah Lynn.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Lynn. I am currently a concentration year student. I did my foundation year practicum at Family and Children's, and I rotated throughout all the departments pretty much. And then this year I'm back at Family and Children's, and I'm in the Child Abuse and Trauma Services unit, and I am not employment based. Oh, and I graduate in a month, May 2021.
And then Jenna.
Hey, I'm Jenna Adair. I'm in my concentration year. The first practicum I did was at OCCJ, which stands for, let's see if I can remember it all, the Oklahoma Center for Community Justice. Yes. And this year I am working with the Department of Resilience and Equity at the City of Tulsa. Neither one was employment based, and I am going to walk in May, but I don't officially graduate until August.
Awesome. Well, thank all 4 of you guys for attending. So today we're just kind of going to ask, I think I've got 5 questions for each of you to answer. It's just kind of to get some input on the practicum and what practicum's like for an MSW student. And hopefully it will either ease some people who have questions about it or just kind of let them know what to expect. We can start, since I started with Jenna, I'll start from the bottom list. We'll start with Jenna. And the first question I have for you is, looking back on the perspective of practicum and being a practicum student, what were the pros and cons to you?
Um, hmm, I mean, I guess the major pro is that you really get those experiences, right? And you get to expand your network. I think that's the big thing. It is a big time commitment, obviously. And I know in foundation year, I really struggled with wanting to do more. I was a little bored, so sometimes that happens, but overall, it's been a really good experience.
Awesome. And so, what was expected of you as a practicum student and at your practicum site, and what kind of impacted you to move through your program?
Oh, are you asking me again?
Yep, these are all for
okay.
you.
Oh, I didn't know we were doing it that way. Okay. Can you say that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah. So what was expected of you as a practicum student, and how did what was expected of you impact you through the program?
I mean, the major thing that is expected of you is that you show up, you do the work that you're assigned, and then you document it in your weekly logs. And in concentration year, they have you meet the competencies to whatever you're doing in your logs. And I mean, personally, I just took initiatives to act in certain areas I was interested in. You know, that's one of the big areas that I feel like they don't really tell you is, you know, you do have to have some initiative and act up for what you want and what you're questioning. Always ask questions. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what happened with my camera, but so I was just realized I'm probably doing this the hard way. So let's just stick with one question and we'll have all four answer of the same question, and then we'll move on to the next. Sorry about that. So we'll just stick with number 2, and then we can go back to number 1 for the ones who didn't get to answer. So Sarah Lynn, what would you say is to be expected of you, and what impacted you to move through it?
First of all, you're doing great. It's okay. Panels are really hard. Um, I think what was expected of me, I think it was really difficult going into a completely like clinical practicum through the computer. And so I was not in person at all. And so I think just taking initiative and like emailing clinicians and being like, hey, I saw that you have this on your schedule. Like, can I sit in and observe? And so that was kind of expected of me at first. And then after the first 2 weeks, they started expecting me in concentration year to like co-facilitate sessions and lead sessions. So now I kind of have like built my own caseload, which is nice. But I think, the second part, as you move through, I think my foundation year, I came in straight from undergrad. And so I was really trying to like gain a lot of experience. And I knew that I slightly wanted to work with children, but wasn't sure. And so at Family and Children's, your first year, you rotate through like adult mental health. And so you pick a department in adult mental health. Then you go and do children. And so you pick a department that works with children. And then we picked like a what's it called? Like not normally like outpatient. So like their wraparound services, their home-based services, like homeless outreach. And so I kind of got to get experience in every single like aspect of clinical work, which was nice. And so I think that just impacted me by like informing my decision that I for sure want to work with like children and families, and not necessarily working with adults right off the bat. So yeah.
Okay, and Ayana?
In my practicum, I'm just in the foundation year. So in my practicum, it was expected that I communicate, fill out the weekly logs like Jenna talked about, and just take advantage of the opportunity to learn from my preceptors. And then think about critically what I'm observing during my supervision with and compare like what I'm seeing in practice and what I'm learning in class. And how that impacted me as I moved through the program, it just gives me more of like the real life experience when we're talking about things in class or theories in class. I can connect it to what I've seen.
Okay, great. And where are we? Jana, sorry.
Yeah. I think I through like doing my practicum. Am I answering pros and cons or what was expected or both?
We can come back to the pros and cons.
Okay. Yeah. One big thing that is expected is, of course, the contract. And I think it's interesting when you're in a more direct practice or like clinical setting and fitting in some of the other contract items. You kind of have to get creative to make those your activities like fit into the competencies or to add different activities to what the agency might expect you to do. So for example, I'm shadowing a lot of therapy sessions and then also doing some of kind of like what Sarah Lynn said of like co-facilitating, or I have a couple that I kind of lead. But with the way that some of the internships go here, some of the programs that have interns here are LPC programs or they're LMFT programs. And so they have had social work interns, but the requirements for me look differently than some of the other ones have. And so just kind of like advocating for like what my practicum needs to look like and making sure that I'm negotiating kind of like with the people that coordinate that, like what that can look like, is something that maybe I just didn't know what that would look like, but it has been a lot more of like conversations than what maybe I thought. But everything has like worked out. It just took a lot of work on the front end to kind of voice like, yeah, I'm gonna have to be doing these things, and like so this might look differently than for other interns that you've had. So that's maybe one thing that was expected of me that that I'm thinking of right now.
Okay, great. And then we will move on to question 3. And as a practicum student, how do you feel like you benefited your agency? And then we'll go ahead and start with Jenna again.
So I think I've benefited my agency, especially the one right now. They don't know what disability is. They don't know how to make things accessible. So I'm working with them to make all of their platforms accessible. So I got some IT knowledge this year. Yay. I'm sure everyone did. And, I did that at OCCJ too, but to a lesser extent, just teaching people about disability and what is needed and, just and best practices surrounding disability and how to help those communities.
Okay, Sarah Lynn.
So something that I did in my foundation year was I got to build like curriculum for a mindfulness group at an elementary school. And so we spent like all day on Thursday, just like going around to different classrooms. And a lot of the stuff that Family and Children's has is really great, but it's a huge agency. And so I think a lot of the like stuff that they were using for groups and like their resource lists and things like that, like hadn't been updated in a while, especially for interns. And so I got to come up with my own curriculum and really like learn how to find evidence-based practices. And like what works well in a school and what doesn't. And then also like updating the resource list for interns was really helpful. And then I got to learn a lot about like Tulsa and what we offer and programs like that, just because I moved here in 2019. And so I didn't really know a lot of like the agencies that Tulsa had and the resources that they had to offer. And so I think that benefited the agency, but also me. And I feel like a lot of the, like Jenna said, like she had to figure out IT things. Well, you're going to take that into your actual professional experience. So I think for me, I've given a lot to the agency, but I've also gotten a lot back.
Okay, Ayana?
I think I was able to attend a lot of virtual conferences, virtual trainings, and things like that since this practicum year is very virtual. So I've had to be a little creative. And being able to share that learning with my preceptor and with my field instructor, then they're able to carry it forward and use that new knowledge with their staff when they might not have the time to attend those virtual conferences.
And Jana?
My mind went back to my first practicum too. I for part of it was with the family meeting facilitators with DHS, and they really wanted some feedback about how families felt about those meetings and whether or not they felt like they were beneficial, because that was something that DHS was kind of adding in. They were adding in more family meetings for families that were in that process of trying to meet the requirements to hopefully be reunified with their kids. And so I was told of that need, and then my field instructor kind of walked me through developing a survey for those families, and so I got to kind of make calls and check in with families on my own, which was just interesting, going from listening to a family meeting and then being able to talk with those families by myself. So yeah, that was something that I think was helpful for them, but also I kind of just got the ball rolling, and then they were able to kind of use what I started to keep going and to get some feedback. And so I think with that, it whenever you do get to like maybe start something at your practicum, because we're there for a shorter time, like it's interesting because you might just be a little piece in something that they need, but not the whole big picture. So that's definitely what it felt like.
Okay, awesome. So next question was, how do you feel like you have kept balance with your time management, as in with student life, work life, practicum life, and personal life? Oh, and well, yeah, Jenna, sorry, I didn't know if...
It's okay. Yeah, that was really a challenge this year. So I got a nice little, what are they called? I don't even know what they're called. I think they're called like a appointment calendar. So it's in 30 and 15-minute increments. Helps a lot. And then I color coded because I like that. And it just really helps me see my week and everything I have to do and the free time I have and everything like that. That has been a huge help. And also, so for my practicum this year, I had to assemble what's called a Gantt plan, which is basically a plan saying who you're going to work with, what you're going to produce, how you're going to produce it, what you need to produce it, and the kind of the timeline and the date that you're going to have that ready by. So getting those plans to my preceptor was also really helpful too.
And Sarah Lynn?
I think my first year, I didn't really have a choice whether to time manage well or not. I know that I think we can all attest to this, like, especially Jana, because her and I worked together in the GRA office, but I was in full-time school. So I was in like 12 hours of school. I was in 20 hours a week of practicum. And then I spent 20 hours a week as a research assistant. And so I didn't really have a choice of whether or not I was good with time management. But I think that Jenna makes a good point with like a calendar. And I remember my first 2 weeks at my first practicum, I would go to like write my weekly log and I'd be like, I don't remember anything that I did at practicum. I remember absolutely nothing. And so making sure that I was like using my Outlook calendar, like from the agency on my phone and being like, okay, I observed a session and this is the modality that they used. And I remember doing this, this, and this in that hour. And so I felt like that helped me manage my time well, but also it kept me organized. And I think just like putting those boundaries up, it's been more difficult in concentration year just because we have so many hours to get. And there's a little bit more flexibility with working from home. But I think just setting those boundaries with your field instructor, with your boss, and with like schoolwork. So like I had my GRA days that I was in the office, and I didn't do work outside of that. And my boss knew that. And I was like, practicum days are Wednesdays. And so I wasn't able to like be in the office or do anything. But I think setting those boundaries, sticking to them, and like starting with that instead of like getting so behind and so overwhelmed a few weeks into it that's when you put them up. Just start out with that. And so Jennifer asked a question. I don't know the answer to it because I'm graduating in May. But I know as a concentration year student, that's going from January to May. I believe it's like 27 hours a week. Christy, you may know the answer to that too, but it's a lot of hours. And so I think just setting those boundaries.
Just to pop in here. So Jennifer, when because of the pandemic and the stipulations from CSWE, there has been some changes and adjustments. So your coordinator would know the exact number that you would need. So go ahead and check in with that person, okay?
Okay, and we'll pick up with Ayana.
For me, because DHS is no longer in an office, I've really had to do a lot of flexible time management because I just really have to jump in on times when my preceptor is in the field. I have to go with her because otherwise it's really hard to get those practicum hours just because I can't go to an agency in person on set days and set times. So just for me, I have to like have a calendar, but it's a very flexible calendar of like, okay, they said I have this visit at this time, put it in my calendar right away so I don't forget about it or double schedule myself. But then also making sure that I'm looking at like when our papers due so that I'm not doing too much on a day right before our papers due. And then also, just making sure that I'm not double booking myself, being flexible, and making sure that I'm not getting behind in hours in practicum because it's really hard to do 10 hours one week, which is only 2 hours behind. But then the next week, that means you have to do 2 hours extra. So if I'm like for a little while, it's like constantly 1 hour behind, which makes it really hard all of a sudden to catch up.
And Jana.
Sorry, something was dinging on my computer. So when I think about this question, I think of like the different seasons even that have happened this year, like right when the pandemic hit, like what time management looked like is a lot different than right now, just because things are constantly changing. And so I think part of it is being willing to like adjust as you go based on like what's being required and like what different things look like. But I kind of have to, so I am a grad assistant and then am in practicum right now and then am in class. And all of the like optimal ways of me doing those things look different than each other. So I'm in practicum in person, which does kind of help me to like have boundaries of like, this is what I'm doing right now. And then, but like how I'm going to be doing this type of work and like this setting and what I need is different than whenever I'm working from home for my grad assistantship. And so this might not directly answer the question, but like I kind of work on time management by thinking ahead about like what I'm going to need while I'm in each setting. And so like if I'm working from home, I really have to think about like what type of situation do I need to put myself in to make the most of this time and to not get distracted and to not start like feeling pretty like down, because I think working from home you can just more easily, like if you're isolated, you can get in your head and like off in a different world. So I think me trying to do time management is become me just kind of thinking of what my needs are going to be in each space and trying to set myself up for like being efficient in that space. Yeah.
Okay, and our last question before we go back to number 1, since I decided to skip that. What advice would each of you give to students for a successful practicum experience?
So, I would really lean into your interests. And something I learned, especially for concentration year, is maybe your area of interest isn't with one of the agencies that's contracted with OU. City of Tulsa was not contracted with OU. So you do have that freedom to search for the practicum you want. You just have to get it all organized with Rachel, right? And, really just doing that and networking, that's been a huge help. I leaned in so hard into my disability sphere that I've been doing speaking arrangements with other agencies and getting paid for it. Last one I went, I got $100 gift card to Amazon. That's awesome. So yeah, really lean into what you're interested, because it's going to benefit you, it's going to benefit the agency, it's going to make everybody happier, and it'll really lead to your future career endeavors. Yeah.
Okay, and Sarah Lynn?
I think for me, my biggest advice would be to like be present and ask questions, and whether that's to your preceptor or your field instructor, but like it is what you make it. And so especially at Family and Children's, like they're a very well-oiled machine. Like they've got the internships down. They have so many interns that they have like a clinical director of interns. And so but not everyone's experience is the same. And so for me, I knew that I wanted to rotate, and I was kind of like the guinea pig doing it. And that was the first time that they had done that. And so I think I knew that I really liked school-based in the end and wanted to work with children. So I asked my field instructor to be taken out of one department and put back in school-based. And so I think just it is what you make it. And don't be afraid to ask questions. You're not annoying. I was like very intimidated to ask questions to clinicians because they have so much experience and they know so many things, but like they're just humans too. And they've all been exactly where you are. And so I just annoy people and just ask them questions. And then I just have to remind myself that I don't really care. And I don't think that I'm annoying when I ask questions. And so that's all that matters. But I think just like if there's a session that you really want to sit in on, or like a modality that you really want to see, like ask your field instructor about it, ask your preceptor. And if they're like, I'm in a very micro practicum, but if there was macro things that I wanted to do, like I asked my field instructor, and then I went to like a community partnership meeting. I like want to sit in on board meetings, so I'm going to go to a board meeting, things like that. But if I didn't ask for those, I wouldn't get them. And so I think it just is what you make it, and ask questions.
Okay, Ayana?
I'm going to kind of second that of advocating for yourself. And also, if you want to attend a conference or read a book about something that maybe isn't directly related to your practicum site, if it's still related to social work, it can get tied in. So like I was able to read a book about a social work topic, and it's not necessarily DHS specific, even though that's my practicum site, but it's still social work. And so we were still able to discuss it and tie it in. And then read your emails from the field office, because they'll give you a lot of reminders about when things are due. They're signed from me. I'm here. Please just read them. I'm not.
I was like, Ayana, you send those.
Yeah, read them, please. Because I'm there to help you, and I want to make sure that you know when your deadlines are.
Okay, and Jana.
Yeah, I think that a couple things I would say is to like operate in humility, but also in confidence, because I think it's really easy to kind of have this mindset that like I don't know what I'm doing, and so like I'm just gonna watch. I'm not gonna like take steps forward. And people will probably usually let you do that unless you start just taking steps forward to have more practice with things. And so I think something that a lot of people have said is like even after you graduate, like you're not always going to feel ready all the time to do all the things, especially in this field. Like sometimes you just have to jump in, and like you want to obviously do that in an ethical way, but like um don't like disqualify yourself from having an experience that you could have by like just thinking that um you're not practiced or prepared enough to try, especially if so, but I mean, and ask for support too, and ask for people to help you if you feel like not ready to do something alone or whatever. But I think I would also say to have grace for yourself, to not know, at least this is probably only speaking to specific people because some people know exactly what they want to do, but I would love to have 20 different practicums to learn about all different things without actually like deciding what I want to go for. And so to me, it kind of stresses me out that like I could use my practicum to do like all sorts of things, but I only get this one time. And so just knowing that like this isn't the only time that you can learn about like things in the field, but it is like a really important opportunity. But like have grace for yourself to not know everything that you like want to learn about right now, and like you can be a learner beyond graduation. These are things that I'm telling myself as advice. So I just thought, other people might want to know that too. Anyways, yeah.
And I think to like piggyback off of that, like my field instructor told me because I was really nervous to do something, and she's like, when's the next time that you're going to be in the room with that client with someone experienced to help you if you insert your foot into your mouth? And like the clinician is there to like remove it for you and to help you with that. And so um I think that was a really big thing for me. And so that kind of like pushed me off the edge a little bit to start doing things. And I also think like taking practicum things like one thing at a time, especially in like your first practicum and even your second, it's so overwhelming. There are so many different things that you have to do, but like find your site, talk to the field office, like they're so helpful. And once you find your site, go from there. And don't look at the whole entire practicum calendar and see all the things that you have to do. Like that's so overwhelming. Just take one thing at a time. And that contract is really overwhelming, but like your field up, like your field instructor will help you, the field office will help you. So I just think taking things one step at a time was really helpful for me as well.
And to go off of Sarah Lynn, if things do get too overwhelming, I've had to deal with a lot of legal stuff this year. So I communicated with Rachel, with my liaison, and, I said I need to take a step back. I need a break. So I'm taking a break for a month, and then I'm going to amp up my hours in the summer. So, just seek out those opportunities. If you are struggling, just let them know. Communicate always.
Okay, now to go back to number one. What are the pros and cons of your experience at Practicum? We'll start with Sarah Lynn.
I think pros, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but I got to rotate through a bunch of different departments. And so I kind of got to experience like what adult outpatient looks like, what children's school based looks like, what homeless outreach looks like. And so I really enjoyed getting like a well rounded experience in my first practicum. And I felt like with someone who didn't have much experience in the field before, I think I went like a mile wide and an inch deep, and now I'm going like a mile deep in my concentration year. So I think for me, that was a really big pro, was that I got to like hop around and actually know what I wanted to do. Um, and so I think if you really don't know what you want to do, kind of like Jana said, like it's okay. But also what Jenna said of like, if you think that you're interested in like X, Y, and Z, like find a practicum that does that. Because that way, even if you hate it and it's horrible, like you're going to know that you don't want to do that. And it's a practicum, it's not a real job. And so, like, yes, you have responsibilities and you have all these things and you need to be professional about it. But at the same time, like it's a practicum and it will be over soon versus like that being your first job and then you're stuck there. And so I think just like diving into whatever experience you want to do. Cons, I think just that it's a big time commitment, but I don't know if that's a con. I think that's just like life. And so it was really time consuming. Um, and it was really difficult to balance, especially as like a full-time student. But if I can do it, anyone can do it, and we're almost done. So I don't know if there's any like cons to the practicum experience. um, it's a lot of like paperwork, the contract is a lot, but it is really helpful in guiding what you want to do. And that's something that I used as like an excuse. And they were like, oh yeah, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh man, that's not written in my contract. Sorry. But you know, shadowing sessions is. And so then they were like, my field instructor was like, okay. And I'm like, sorry, you know, like you signed off on it. So I think like using that to kind of fall back on and guide your experience was really great. But it can be a lot of work and seem like a lot sometimes. But yeah, I don't know if there's any like direct cons. Yeah.
Okay, Ayana.
Okay. I think pros, it's a great opportunity to learn about an agency and a job and either find out that you really like it or that you really don't. Because if you really like it, you've got your foot in the door and you have contacts now at that agency. And if you don't, at least you don't apply for that as your job. Um, and then, and you like, it's really great to learn from preceptors, either things you want to do or things you don't. Amy, my faculty liaison, always tells us, like, if it's not a great experience, at least you've learned what not to do. And then cons, the virtual format of COVID has been just challenging, but you also get to learn how to navigate those challenges. So it's been interesting doing it virtually.
And Jana.
I think I thought of a con first, which is just that it like kind of probably after you really start getting going and like start feeling comfortable, that's like about the time that it ends. At least I just like to take in things for a while, and so I really had to push myself to like, instead of, you know, like staying in the observation stage for a while, like get moving, like yeah, you just don't have enough time to sit in those spots for too long. But I say that and I'm going to be here till August, but I would say it's still true. Like, yeah, there's just more to be learned by practicing than and sitting and waiting. But I would say a pro is, I mean, like just the chance to learn outside of like looking at a book and like being in Zoom classes. I mean, there's just so many pros in my opinion. Yeah, it's hard to like kind of be doing a job and like not be getting paid for it probably, but like yeah, that, I mean, that would be a con, but I think it's just, I mean, we all probably would be in this camp of getting to practice these things with a lot of help and support on very like so many levels. Like you have your field instructor and maybe even a preceptor and your faculty liaison, and you can reach out to other students and you can reach out to other people in the agency that aren't expecting the same level of like readiness as like an employee. I mean, if you're doing employment based, it's different, but yeah, I think it's just a really good and valuable experience.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, all four of you, for your honest input. I know I definitely feel a little bit better about going into the MSW program. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to open it up for if anybody has questions for the four of them. I don't know if anybody has questions. I guess not.
I just miss you guys, Sarah, and you guys. I miss being in classes with you, and I think you guys are super awesome. And I just appreciate you being here today. I have no questions. Just really thank you. You guys have always been awesome.
Thanks. And if anyone has any questions, like, please feel free to like email us. Oh, Vanessa asked. I'm muting myself because I need to think about that one. I think maybe realizing that it's going to be a lot different. So I stayed at the same agency for both practicums. And so when I ended my first practicum, I was co-facilitating sessions with a therapist. And then when I went in to my concentration year starting in January, I was like shadowing. And so I was like, I'm not where I left off. But I was in a whole new department. So I think like giving yourself some grace to kind of like feel it out. But also like concentration year is really the year where like you're supposed to be leading things and co-facilitating things. And so I think, especially for clinical, Jenna, you may have a different opinion because it's a bit, yours is macro, but like I started leading things. And so I think just knowing that it's going to be a lot different, and going into it with that mindset of like, you're not going to be like observing and shadowing, like actually doing things. So I think my biggest advice would just to be like prepare for that, but also like make sure you block out time in your practicum week to like prepare for those sessions and look up things to do with clients. I know that was something that took up time that I didn't really expect.
Yeah, so with macro, it is a little bit different. The first year, you really kind of are sitting back and observing programs and how they work and the intricacies of them. And then, you might be doing program evaluation. I mean, that's part of my practicum this year, or even starting programs of your own, that doesn't have to happen. So I hope that doesn't overwhelm anybody. You don't have to do that. I took it upon myself to do that. So don't feel scared. But yeah, I think it's a lot of what, Sarah Lynn had. And the main way I kind of came for my foundation year was I used my contacts at my site. And I was like, I like this work. I want to do a little more. And they helped me find City of Tulsa. And because I'm a planner, the second they told me, I called them up and was like, hey, I want to practicum with you, even though it was like a year before we even had to sign up because I'm a planner. But that's just me. And so yeah, use your contacts at your site, your foundation site, so that you can, if there is a topic area you like or something you're interested in, they can help you find another placement site for your concentration year.
And just in case anybody missed that question, Vanessa had asked what the best advice for is from moving from your foundation year to concentration year and practicum. Did anybody else have any final questions?
I did actually. When you go into your between foundation year and concentration year, do you write a new contract between those? Or is it the same format whenever you go into concentration year?
It's the same format, but I think I had different like objectives. And so there's a planning session in your fall before you start your concentration year, and they'll go through the contract with you again. And a lot of it is the same information, but for me, I'd kind of forgotten a lot of it. And so you'll write your or you'll go through a planning meeting, and then you'll write your contract at the beginning of your practicum. But the like objectives are a bit different because you're doing more things in practicum, and like co-facilitating things.
Okay, we are actually out of time. So if anybody, I'm sure everyone knows at least one of these four amazing ladies. So if anybody has any questions for them, I'm sure you can get in contact, or you can ask one of us for their contact information. But we just want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend our Zoom meeting for our first virtual professional development day. So hopefully we'll be in person next professional development day. So
thanks, Brittany. You did a great job.
thank you.
You did a great job, Brittany.